Many people view happiness as a kind of goal to be attained, a finish line to cross by achieving certain conditions, whether it be a specific level of wealth, a relationship status, an ideal situation. People, they believe that once these conditions are met, they will then achieve happiness. Now, I disagree with this view, and I would like to present a different perspective, one that puts happiness not as an object to be attained, but rather as a mode of being. Now, whilst it may be tempting to think of this mode as something we can acquire, the word attainment, it can imply a kind of sudden shift from not having this mode towards then having it. But I think the word cultivation is better in the way that one would cultivate a garden, you know, and it describes happiness as something that is gradually and deliberately cultivated, as something that is grown over time as a process. You plant seeds, you remove weeds, you wait, you give time, patience, and care, to a garden. And in the same way, we should nurture and nourish our mental and emotional lives in a similar way, you know, giving them the space to grow, to flourish, to move towards better well being, compassion, understanding, and empathy. There are many factors which can help a garden to grow, some nourishing, some toxic. And similarly, our minds, we are influenced by countless inputs, which often arrive and impinge into our minds without our awareness. The things we read, social media, the music we listen to, the shows, the movies that we watch, all these plant seeds in our minds. And some of these seeds are subtle and can shift the rhythms and habits of our thoughts. Advertisements and cultural influences work this way. They subtly shape our desires and our behaviors. And society and culture, it by design molds our self perception and our beliefs, boxing us into narrow definitions of what life is meant to be. But nature at its source, resists being boxed in. It evolves and changes by its nature. But we humans, we often try to confine it with concepts and labels. And, when we live solely and entirely within these rigid constructs of our minds and our words, our world, it becomes stale and lifeless. Our words and our labels, they can create the illusion of understanding, but we should remember that our words, they are pointers. They are pointing to something, but you know, they are not the essence of what they are describing. The word joy points to something, but the word itself, the symbol, these scribbly lines or the noise of joy, which I'm talking to, it is not, the raw, felt, embodied experience of joy, which we know and we feel. But then, what is the feeling of happiness? You know, what does the word happiness itself point to? And like I said, our words can only point to things. They can never fully capture it. And when we describe our inner lives, words are merely symbols. They are not the experiences themselves. They help us to communicate both with ourselves and with others, but we should recognize the limitations of such words, of such communications, and we should not be swept away and trapped within the narratives that our words and our thoughts can create. I think that many of the cultural stories that are often spoken in our society do not contribute to authentic happiness. They often perpetuate fear, separation, and suffering. And, it does seem as though we are immersed in stories which keep us divided and dependent. you know, and detached from love. And I think that when we feel as though the stories of our culture are not conducive towards love and understanding and empathy, we should reject such stories and narratives. And this rejection of the stories, it can feel disorienting, as though we've lost our footing in life. But this disorientation, it signals the opportunity to look inward and to grow and to understand one's own inner story and to seek true vitality from within oneself, from within one's own existence, rather than from outside by some talking head in society who tells you what to believe and what is right. People want to look towards leaders and gurus. They don't look within themselves. They don't become their own guru. They don't become their own leader. And this is how society creates dependency. It creates children and not mature, sovereign adults. And, I want to ask you, in relation to this question of happiness and truth, I want to ask you what truly energizes you. What brings you into a state of flow where you feel truly engaged and fulfilled in the world? You know, the flow state is perhaps one of the most meaningful states of being, states of mind to exist in. And you will find meaning in this flow state. You won't find meaning in the stories or words that society tells you. You know, they are only really pointers, these words, as I've said. True meaning isn't found in a concept, it's experienced. It must be cultivated from within yourself. And and yeah, we live so attached to the words that we say, to the thoughts, the machinations of our mind. And this is bizarre, really. This is bizarre, really, because our mind can trap us. It can send us into these ruminative cycles, which just make us feel disoriented and confused. As Immanuel Kant once said in his Critique of Pure Reason, the mind itself is almost condemned to ask questions that it cannot answer. The mind is fundamentally limited in this sense, and we must understand this limitation to our core. And this means that we cannot find meaning through words. And I think that we need to look beyond the propositional. We need to look beyond language to discover a felt and embodied justification of meaning, something beyond verbal expression. So maybe we find meaning, or the experience of meaning, through silence and presence. And as the Sufi poet Rumi once said, silence is the language of God. All else is poor translation. And many of us, we live immersed in words, immersed in thoughts and concepts, and we forget the silence which underlies it all. Before every thought is silence, between every thought is silence, and after every thought is silence. And in that silence, you find your true self and the source of everything. Thoughts, they come and go. They are transient. They are existing in time. Yet silence itself is timeless. You are not your thoughts. Remember this. You know, when you say, I am this thing or that thing, or not this or not that, you are identifying and confining yourself with fleeting concepts. True self-exploration will always involve asking, you know, how are these thoughts, how are these words shaping my reality? And, this is the work that we have to do. We need to unveil all these sorts of narratives, these models that we set up to describe ourselves, to pigeonhole ourselves into these fixed categories. And ultimately, you have to discover the answers yourself. You cannot rely on someone else to tell you what to do. I can't do your inner work for you. My role here, my intention here is only to offer pointers, to kind of plant seeds that you can nurture and apply to your own journey. And, we are all on this path together, really, towards greater meaning, towards greater love, compassion, and understanding. And if we aren't moving towards these values, then what are we doing? If we aren't striving for truth, what is the point? What is the purpose? What do we gain from being trapped in ignorance and unaware of the various illusions that bind us? And want to conclude really here with the the essential notion that true understanding lies within the silence of your heart, not in words, not in thoughts or external pursuits. Truth is where you are, always, and it always is with you. And I'll leave that at that. Goodbye, adios, like and subscribe, all that YouTube, yeah, jazz. Right, see ya.